And welcome to the Comic Corner. My name's Damon. He is Fat Thor. Buddy, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. We got a lot of comic books to talk about today, so I'm super excited.
So many comics. Before we get to that, we had some tragic news in the comic book community. Um, if you know comic historian, if you know Ben Potter, then you probably have heard that he has tragically passed away over the weekends. Terrible, terrible news, and we just wanted to send our love and send our condolences to his family and his close friends during this really tragic time. Just awful, awful news, especially because so many of us who are doing this, who are in the comic book community, have come across that channel, may have been influenced by that channel to do, like, I wouldn't be doing this right now if it wasn't for that channel. And what Ben was able to do was just bring so many stories from comics to people who just maybe couldn't get them from wherever they were, and he was just able to make it so much more accessible. So wanted to send our love and condolences to his family and his friends before we get it started. But on with the show, we have the rundown. More mutants revealed in Ultimate X-Men #4. Wanda is back, the epic return of the Scarlet Witch. And we have a new book from Boom Studios called Lawful, Guilt and Anxiety Personified. I'll discuss that later. But first, Ultimate X-Men #4. The Ultimate Universe continues on. And even though this book is really outside of like everything going on in the Ultimate Universe, it's such a contained story, but it's so fascinating. And I was just on Comic Book Nation's comicbook.com's The Pull List yesterday, almost like defending this series to an extent, because I've really been enjoying this. I know you've been really enjoying this, but for a lot of people, this isn't like, a typical X-Men book. That's kind of the point. And this issue to me really personifies that in a lot of ways, because it feels more New Mutants, especially with the characters that we have. We're starting to get a little more Nico Minoru. We have this version of Storm, May Storm, which is, as we mentioned, Aurora is still in this universe, but we have like another character who has the powers, and this universe's version of Armor, as well as like some teases here and there of some other mutants within this little town in Japan as well. This issue, we start to see like a little bit of like that secretness of mutants, right? Like how this is starting to get around through the town, through social media by the very end of it. And like the Shadow Kings, like looming doom going from issue to issue. But before we get into all of it, what did you think of this?
I absolutely loved it. And we talked about this before. And don't get me wrong, like, this is definitely a slower burn kind of book. And like people who have that criticism of it, I could totally understand that. But for me, it's the type of slow burn that absolutely works. Like, it's the type of slow burn that really is like hooking me with each issue as we're kind of unfolding not only this mystery, but these characters kind of learning and discovering their powers. And I'm really loving it. I think like I said, while I could understand maybe some criticism about the pacing, I personally think that's one of the strengths of the book. And like you said too, like the introduction of all these new mutants and stuff, I think the way that Peach is doing it is a very organic and natural kind of way where we're almost getting a new character every issue, but it doesn't feel like shoehorned. Again, it just like the introduction to them feels very natural. And I'm just loving what I obviously we don't know the full scope of it yet, but this kind of, like you said, Shadow King, like shadow creepy monster, like the horror elements of this book really work well for me as well. And like tying all of this together with Peach's art is just, it's 10 out of 10 for me. Like, I could not be loving this book more. And I think this issue really kind of stepped things up a notch to where we're going to be going further in this run.
I mean, this book is dark. It is creepy. It is not afraid to go to places that is meant to make you uncomfortable. But man, the art, like we talk about it every issue. if you like Peach Momoko's art, like you're just gonna have the time of your life with this because you can just go through and just cruise through this gorgeous, gorgeous watercolors, painted watercolor artwork that is from panel to panel, page to page. Absolutely just drop dead, gorgeous, incredible, incredible stuff. By the end of it, though, we have a big fight. We get to see Armor really use powers more, which is something we haven't seen a whole lot so far throughout this series is the use of powers, honestly. So we really get to see Armor, ironically, no pun intended, come out of her shell a little bit. And then there's a fight, it ends. We kind of go to a couple days later, and then we have a tease, a little tease to go into next issue, which is we thought Maystorm was able to zap everyone's phone that was like recording the two of them using their powers to get away from, the creepy Shadow King monster. But it looks like one person's phone was still able to capture it. And there we go. We have our cliffhanger. What did you think about that ending?
We were just talking about this like 2 seconds ago, and like I have mixed feelings about the ending because one, I love it, and we just talked about this introduction of this new mutant who's kind of a mystery. Which I'll let you say your theory because I love it, and I think that you're right on the money with it. But I honestly, we were just talking about it. I feel like I was just talking about how I love the structure of this book. I feel like this issue could have ended a page earlier. So we end off this issue, like you said, with the realization that not everyone's phones got turned off and someone got a picture of our main character, the Armor character. And I don't know, it just felt like that would have been a good place to start issue 5. Like start it up right there, like, oh, someone took a picture of her, and end this one with the kind of stinger cliffhanger of this mysterious new mutant. And again, that's just like personal opinion, and that is like the smallest of nitpicks I could probably pick of this, great book. But again, I will say, to be fair, that last page did kind of throw me for a loop. Again, just felt like it would have been a good page to open up next issue with.
So I will actually disagree with you on that because I love the fact that it
Please.
ended on this because it makes me want the next issue. If it just ended on, a tease of a mutant who I genuinely have no idea who this mutant could be. It's a character who has some sort of ability, possibly it looks like, to manipulate the electrical energy around her. And she just kind of puts that little thing in her mouth and it pops and eats it almost like a firework. So I was like, is this like a Jubilee type character? Is this like I don't know. It was like,
I think Jubilee. I think that's a great shout, dude. I really think that's it. Like the way she eats the
cannonball type
little
of
like
thing. Like, I don't
electric.
know. Like, yeah, I was like trying to like a cannonball aspect. I don't know. I'm trying to like think of ideas. Who knows? Maybe this could be a completely original character too, who
Yeah.
who's to say? Who's to say? But I really enjoyed that ending because it makes me intrigued for the next year. Just like, I see where we're going now
Mm,
because now like almost their secret lives are starting to unfurl, and this is where we're going with this, right?
yeah.
So I appreciated that as
And
a
I don't
concept.
disagree with you
Yeah.
either. Like I said, that's just a very personal thing for me. And again, like that's like the smallest little nitpick I could think of for this issue. Like I said, I don't dislike the ending at all. It just, again, my opinion, thought that'd be a good place to pick up next time. But again, what the hell do I know, right?
So sticking with Marvel, we are moving over to
Oh yes.
Steve Orlando's The Scarlet Witch because there's nothing Marvel loves more than a new number one. And I think what is funny about this number one is it really does not feel like a number one at all because it is such a continuation of Steve Orlando's original run of even before that, like that Darkhold Omega Alpha saga that
Mhm.
Wanda was in, and a little bit of a continuation from the Scarlet Witch Quicksilver mini that we just had. It just feels like a continuation of it. Can you pick up this and start here as a number one? Sure. And I understand why they do it. Number one sell for that reason, because it is seen as a jumping on point. But there's also a reason why not every arc should be a number one. So this I enjoyed. I did enjoy. Before I get into anything else with this, what do you think this issue?
I 100% agree. I really loved it, but I will say I think you bring up a very good point in the sense of like I have been reading Scarlet Witch. I've read, Steve's other solo run. I read Scarlet Witch Quicksilver, and I've read the Darkhold mini, like the Omega and whatever the other one was. So this felt very much like you said, like, okay, hell yeah, we're back, baby. You know what I mean? Like, let's go. But I never even really considered, though, if someone wasn't reading the previous run, I could totally see them being lost in this issue. And this, would just come, I think, for like, what kind of reader are you? Like, for me, I can pick something up like this and just be like, oh, she has the dark hold in her. Okay, cool. Like, let's go. Like that, those kind of things don't hang me up. But I do know for some people it does. And like, they kind of get hung up on details like that. So I will say, while I love this issue, I think this issue probably has some of the best pages of Scarlet Witch that we've gotten in Steve's runs thus far. But if you haven't been reading it, I could see you being a little confused.
We have Steve Orlando, the writer, Jacopo Camagni, the artist, Frank William, the colorist, and letters, VC's Ariana Mayer. I think the art in here is very good. It's very difficult also because that very first arc or two of Steve Orlando's Scarlet Witch that started up last year, I loved that art so much from Sarah Pacelli. That was almost like the definitive art of this book. And what
Same.
I think is really cool that Jacopo is able to do is kind of keep that style, but still make it his. The colors do good work by, making sure that Wanda isn't just a white woman. She's Romani. The colors signify that. So that is very important. That was very important to her character throughout that, original run. But we are introduced to this character. Was this a character introduced in the Scarlet Witch Quicksilver mini Mantor, or is this like an introduction here?
Yeah,
That was yeah, like it was
that
just like,
was
oh, okay, we have like a new shop worker. His name is Mantor. That's neat.
yeah, threw me for a loop too. I don't remember. He definitely was not in Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. If he was, must have been in the background and I missed him. But I love, though, this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but did you read the little note at the end of Mantor, or however you say his
Oh
name?
yeah, yeah, yeah. They
When
have
he's
like
like, I'm gonna go get a dog. I was like, oh man, come on, Steve. Why you gotta do this? Like, you make me care about this dude now.
Oh man. Yeah, slight spoiler for anyone, but Mantor had a very bad day.
Yeah,
You get
not good.
introduced to a character, you start to be like, "Oh, this is a fun little throw in here for us." And oh boy. Oh dear. Oh no.
Yeah.
What I said about this book yesterday, and I actually really enjoyed this aspect of it. The very first run, the first 12 issues of that run from Steve Orlando, it was Scarlet Witch, but small scale, right? It was Wanda dealing with small scale personal problems, which I really enjoyed because even though she is a Scarlet Witch and can do anything, she can also do anything, but from a very small scale issue, like going inside someone's head or having them find someone who's lost, type of thing. That's the whole concept of The Last Door, is a problem that only she can solve. And it may not be some giant, crazy chaos magic invasion. It can be something that only she can solve from a very personal level. This new run seems like we are now expanding upon that by being, we saw her handle the small scale stuff. We are now showing you why she's a Scarlet Witch, the power that she has. We are going to throw everything we have at her in this first issue. So if you're here to watch Wanda pull off crazy chaos magic feats, then jump on right on because that's what this book is.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say very quickly, too, just to Steve's writing, and something that I love about this issue in particular is I think he does a very good job in this issue with like playing off of our expectations as readers. And there was multiple moments in this book where I I don't want to spoil it for people, but like I think I know what's going to happen, and then it just the complete opposite happens, but in a great way, right? And I think like Steve implanted a couple of those moments in that issue, and I really enjoyed that. And again, just kind of added to the fun, and I think what makes this Scarlet run so strong, and the previous runs, is like you said before, you know, the previous run seemed a lot like, here's Wanda dealing with these problems and like containing this power. But now it's like, okay, we've done that. Now the power is being unleashed, right? And it's like we're seeing what that means, and like finally all this stuff with the Darkhold is kind of coming to a head in this run. So like you said, we're gonna kind of get more bigger problems. But yeah, I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, love this book. Love the series. I cannot wait for more. Steve's killing it. We got 2 Steve books this week, actually.
Yes, we do. And we also have 2 Steve Orlando interviews up here on our channel. So make sure you go
Yes.
listen to those, because the last one you mentioned that we had with Steve Orlando, he talked about how we're going to see more Quicksilver in this Scarlet Witch run. And we see him in this issue. And the only thing I will say about this is they absolutely got away with a panel from an angle that it was drawn, and I can't stop laughing whenever I see it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I will show you after the show. But
So
there's
I
a
gotta go
panel
back.
on here that they drew from a very specific angle, and I'm looking at, like, I almost like looking back at the camera and being like, I know what you did here. I see what you did here. That was intentional, and I think that's hilarious.
I'm looking back right now.
I will show you after the pod. Don't you worry. Don't you worry, because we have another book that you haven't read yet. So while you look back on that, I will talk about this one. This is Boom Studios' Lawful. This is from Greg Pak. I really enjoyed this issue. I almost described this as anxiety and guilt personified, but it's a world that really punishes any little time you break the smallest rule. So what this world is if you break a rule, break a law, it's not even a law necessary. If you like lie, the more you do it, there's a chance you literally become like an animal, a monster type of thing, right? So if you break a law, then you're starting to get some scales on you. You keep doing it, now all of a sudden you have a claw on your hand type of thing, right?
Do you get to
It's the
choose what kind of monster you become?
no, it's just
Oh,
completely almost
man.
predetermined in a way. But it is a it is like, for me, when I was a kid, I was very much like goody two shoes, Boy Scout, like didn't want to do anything wrong. And that like looms on you. Like questioning every little thing that you do, like looking back at your day, being constantly anxious about it. That is this main character right here. And all he wants to do is essentially become like an officer slash detective. And you have to be nearly perfect in your entire life in order to accomplish that. His best friend, however, total rule breaker, just likes to have fun. You see her on the cover right here. She has like a cheetah tail and horns. Like she's just like, I'm having fun. Oh, and a paw on her hand too, right? Like that's the type of character that like he is best friends with. So then it puts you into a point when you are at like your moral grounds meets your what would you do for your best friend type of thing. And now you're at a head. So it can get a little frustrating if you don't agree with the character and you're thinking of him being like, wow, he's too much of a Boy Scout. This is why I don't like these characters. Keep reading, because this is definitely one of those where he has to start making decisions. And is he going to do something that benefits himself or helps the people around him?
I love that. That sounds awesome. So wait, so if you like lie too much, do you just become an animal?
Yeah, you straight up become like a
It's like,
full-fledged monster.
whoa, that's cool. I I can't wait to read this.
So it's very good. Diego Galindo's art in here, I really enjoyed. Very, very solid first issue. For a first issue, did everything that you wanted to. You understand where the character's coming from. You understand the world that's created here. Very, very straightforward from the opening sequence of it all. And then you start to like feel for this character, because you can see how he is at odds with his own moral standings, even though those moral standings may be like, peak perfection, don't even like jaywalk type of thing, right? Like That type of, come on, dude. Like, you really,
Yeah.
like, just go across the street and help someone out over there because the light's red. Like, come on. So you get a little bit of that going on here, and I'm interested to see where this goes because it's right now you're like, okay, it's clearly going to be someone dealing with his moral grounds, but what else can we unfurl within this world
Mhm.
that would make this like a second layer to it, right?
I'm in. I'm sold.
So that was a very good first issue. Greg Pak, Dick Lindo's Lawful from Boom Studios. Also from Boom
Oh,
Studios, our guy Philip Kennedy Johnson, Crocodile Black #2 from Psalm as well with the art. I really enjoyed this first issue that came out a month ago. The second issue, so the first issue was very much like a trying to make it weird, putting you into a world that is like very uncomfortable because like pandemic stuff for me still just gives me like a GBs, right? And that's the world, like it's very 2020 in here. But there's also the aspect of there's this character who clearly has some mental issues, but then you throw in the fact that he also like tries to put on these boots that seem to be possessed that make everything worse.
dude. I don't even know, but I love it. It's like it's one of those things. Like if someone were to ask me to like describe this book to them, I would have a hard time doing it. But I'm loving everything about it. The first issue completely hooked me with like the violence, but the way in which it was like laid out before us, and like you said, the whole kind of paranoid vibe to it, and like the I really have been enjoying the kind of visual symbolism, like with the mirror and the snake and stuff. I think there's a lot of really interesting visuals in this book that like kind of beg you to go back and really like look at it again. And I mean, I don't really even know what's going on, which is the crazy part, but I'm loving it. And the I guess you could say twist. Maybe it wasn't a twist for some, but for me, it was a twist of the first issue of you know what I'm talking about. That like instantly grabbed me. Again, like the way in which Johnson is kind of laying the book out with the pacing. I love it. I again don't know what's going on, but in the best way possible. And I think that's a real testament to the book. Is if you're confused, but again, no, you know what's going on, but you're confused at the same time, but a good confused. That's a win for me.
So I'd say like the description of this book is we have a guy who's just kind of like going through his life. He's like maybe college years, 20s type of age, really doesn't know what he's doing, clearly has some sort of psychological trauma as his background because we see almost like these squiggly line doodles follow him prior to him
Mm-hmm.
finding these boots off of a dead man in his house who's had like a war history, and he puts on said boots, and those boots seem to have some sort of possession. That's kind of what's going on in the A story. We find out also in this issue that there's a B story where there's a cop and the whole police department, and there's this whole kind of like, cocaine, like underground drug gang war going on that the police are like handling, but like offhand a bit. So they can keep it contained. Like it's still going on, but like within their eyes, it's contained. And it seems like maybe it's starting to get uncontained. So we're starting to see a little bit of that classic A plot with the B plot, and we're starting to see them a little bit come to a head. So that I find very interesting. I'm curious to see where this entire series is going because, like you said, it's weird. There's a lot of like angsty, like creepiness to it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cool.
I was gonna say too, and I think again this is a testament to the book and like the kind of the way that Johnson is laying it out for us. I never even considered this whole possession angle that you're putting out there with the boots. I never even considered that. So again, it's like it's one of those books where there's things in there, you don't know all the answers, and that's like the fun of it, at least for me. So I mean, both of us read it, but we both have very different, ideas of what's going on. Again, those, I love those kind of books. So yeah, I love Crocodile Black. I can't wait for more from this.
We're going to go back to Marvel for a hot minute. I'm just going to brush upon this issue because I know you haven't read it yet. This is Blood Hunt number 3 of this whole Blood Hunt event. And something I realized yesterday when I was going through counting all of these Blood Hunt books, there's 21 Blood Hunt tie-ins just in the month of June. 21. It's excessive. It's a lot. Do you need to read all of them? Absolutely not. Some of them I thought would be more important to the overall saga aren't. Some of them are surprisingly very important. And this issue is interesting because issue 2, not a whole lot really happened. We have like a big cliffhanger at the end of issue 2, which you can see right here on this cover. That's kind of what happened at the end of issue 2. Spoilers, Miles gets bitten and becomes a vampire. So we now have vampire Miles Morales running around. And that gets solved very quickly in this issue.
Oh, that's disappointing.
That gets like kind of like settled very, very, very quickly. There's still like a little bit of an asterisk to that aspect, but it's like type of thing where that's interesting.
That stinks.
From here on out, this is the first issue that I really feel like we're starting to get the wheels turned a bit, but it was more towards the end of the issue because we're 3 issues in. And we still don't know what the hell's going on with Blade.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know why he's doing this, what his motives are, any of that yet. And by the end of next issue, I'm going to need that. I need to know, what is happening here? Because there's, a comment made by Captain Marvel where she's like, I know Blade. That thing is not Blade. Right? Like, I don't know what happened to him, but that's not him. So as this is starting to progress, I'm starting to get to a point where I'm like, I just need to know what's going on with him because issue 2 into 3 just kind of felt like we're in the mud. We're churning. We're like getting through some more interesting elements with it. But for the main title, this needs to be pushing forward. And it feels like he finally just got like a room. We just finally started inching forward with this. So it was good. It was still pretty cool. If you haven't been reading the Dracula tie-in, that is going to be very important because all of a sudden Bloodline and Dracula show up to Doctor Strange's mansion. And if you haven't been reading the Doctor Strange book too, there's some books in here, I'd say Dracula and Doctor Strange are the 2, as of right now, most important tie-ins to all of this.
Yeah, I would 100% agree, and I'll throw into Black Panther Blood Hunt, not necessarily because it's important, just because that book absolutely rips. That first issue was awesome. But I totally agree with you, though. While I have been loving Blood Hunt, I loved issue 1, issue 2, and we talked about this before. Some of my favorite books I'm reading right now are Jed's titles, so Moon Knight, Doctor Strange. So this whole event is specifically just for me. But I will agree that the first 2 issues very much it's oh, this is happening. The vampires are here. This is really bad. And just kind of this is really bad. But to kind of hear that issue 3 is a little bit more of that is, I will say, a little disappointing. And I also agree, it's time. I think it's time now. Okay, we've established the stakes. We've established how bad this really is in with the shadow powers and all that. So now it's time to start kind of unveiling the curtain a little bit. And again, that's just my opinion. I mean, like I just said, Jed's writing some of my favorite titles. So I have faith that he's got a plan to unveil this in a satisfying way. But yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I think, issue 3 needs a little bit more answers. And then moving forward, it's time to start revealing the wizard, if you would.
Issue 3 does leave off on a point where we could potentially see what's going on at the very last page. So you're like, okay, we have potential here to keep pushing through. So hopefully that gets done. From Dark Force to Dark Horse. Ooh,
Oh,
I
I love
love
that
that.
transition.
Into the Unbeing from Dark Horse, Part 1. This was one of your picks. What you got?
Yes. Oh, this book is absolutely awesome. I really, really loved this. So it follows like I don't want to say necessarily like post-apocalyptic world. It's kind of left ambiguous. Like we're in the future and it seems like the world is not in a great place, but it doesn't really divulge, what happened or if, something like that. But it follows a team of researchers and they're researching this like new anomaly that kind of just pops up in the desert at this like huge mountain kind of structure, and it's like it's basically in the shape of like a face. I don't want to say human face, but it's freaky, right? And so these researchers have to go and like they're going to investigate this anomaly. They work for like this company. Again, it's the world is left a little vague, which I'm sure we're going to dive more into as we get further into this series. But yeah, I really love it. Kind of going back to what we were talking about with like pacing of an issue. I really loved the pace of this. It kind of reminded me. I don't know if you ever played like the original Resident Evil games, like on OG PlayStation, but kind of has that kind of like structure and vibe to it, where we're kind of going down the rabbit hole, if you will, and it takes most of the story takes place through the perspective of one character, the kind of leader of this team, and we get like her journal entries to kind of flesh out like who the other characters are. But yeah, it's really good. It's creepy, it's ominous in a great way. Again, like it doesn't spoon feed you everything, right? It just kind of drops you into this world and it's like, okay, let's go, and we're kind of uncovering things as we go along, which I personally really love as like a story structure. And yeah, it's cool, man. It's creepy. I can't wait to see what this thing is, like the anomaly, right? Like it gives you all the right questions you want to ask, and it's just really great. If you like I would say, what is that movie? The Descent, or if you've ever seen like the movie As Above, So Below, it's stuff like that, like kind of creepy locations that have more than meets the eye. But yeah, I love it. A shout out to the whole team that brought this together. I absolutely love this book.
I just can't stop looking at that cover. It is
That's what it's like. That's
creepy,
the
dude.
cover, I think, is a great example of the book. Right? It's like you don't know what the hell that is, right? But it hooks you immediately. So yeah, I really love this one, and I'm excited to see more of this.
We mentioned Steve Orlando earlier. We're going to go back to him with the scale trade. This is another one of
Yes.
your picks. Let's hear about it.
Ooh, scale trade, baby. Again, I love this book. It's hard not to please me, Damon. I'm a pretty easy guy to please, right? But it's like we've talked about this before. The caliber of talent we have in comics right now is just knocking it out of the park. Art, writing, all over the place, and I think scale trade is a great example of that. Like we just said, we love Steve. We love his storytelling, and scale trade has been absolutely awesome. So this is issue 2. First issue kind of throws us into this world where it's basically our world, but dragons still exist. So it's not necessarily a fantasy in the sense of like, goblins and orcs and stuff like that. It's our world just with dragons. And it follows 2 cops that are kind of trying to save dragons from being extinct. Because again, this is bringing fantasy into our real world. So the dragons are victims of poaching and all this kind of stuff of what they call the scale trade, name of the book. And I mean, this issue would just builds off of everything set up in issue 1, I think, in a great way. We talked about earlier with the Scarlet Witch, how earlier in the series, it was very much a kind of villain of the week kind of vibe with the last door. This issue kind of feels like that in the sense of we're following those same 2 cops and they're kind of just going through another case, and everything kind of feels just like, oh, this is just another one of their cases, right? Until the end. And of course, Steve leaves us with another stinger at the end of this, and one that I was just like, oh my gosh, like, no, it changes everything, right? So absolutely love the book. It's the perfect mix to me of like fantasy, whimsical, but also like it's not afraid to go there. Like there's some pretty intense pages in these books, like as especially as it refers to like again the scale trade and them, poaching these dragons. It's not afraid to go there, but it's absolutely loving it. Shout out, I forget her full name, but the artist Megan on this. Her art is absolutely great. Let's see if I can pull it up.
Megan Heisen.
Yes, Megan Heisen. Absolutely great. The way she does the dragons, again, kind of whimsical, but also like we haven't gotten there yet. But if we do get there to where dragons like really start getting into the shits, like you know what I mean? Like you can see where it can go there. The cover, I think, is a great example where you get that perfect mix of it. But yeah, scale trade, absolutely awesome. Shout out Magma Comics. Shout out Steve Orlando. I cannot wait for more from this.
I am a sucker for dragons, so I'm gonna have to check that out. Our last
Yes.
book for the week is from Vault. This is actually an issue. We'll go into this because I think this is a pretty cool idea. This is Something Crawled Out from Vault Comics, Son M and Mad Curse with the art, Son M writing. This is, as of right now, you can read this first issue online for free.
Ooh.
So there you go. They actually have a pretty neat way of going into different ways of being able to get the book. You can get it directly through them digitally and get almost like Kickstarter type of rewards. You can still get it through your local comic shop. You can get it through trade, through single issues. There's so many ways to get this book. And I think that is really, really cool, especially with like the Kickstarter way. So you can just get like the trade of it or the single issues, and then you get all the rewards that would go on top of it as well. Or if you just want to go out for your local comic shop, you can get it directly through them too. Again, many different ways. But onto the book itself. This is really cool and really fun. You get some slasher vibes, almost like the opposite of what we just talked about with Lawful, which was a character who's going to go through their moral area, like trying to almost similar, where we have a character here who's literally friends with almost like the devil. But the devil, like, they don't really know that, and they seem like a good person at heart. But this is a town that is starting to unfurl into the weird, into the creepy. And like I said, you get some really cool slasher vibes in here. It's a little bit of a spicy book, too. You get some romance aspects, just like hinted and teased throughout. It's creepy. It's a very, very solid read. And my best pitch with this is, you know what's better than a free comic, buddy? A really good free comic. So there's no reason to not check this out.
Sold. Creepy, spicy, free. What more do you want?
It's a good way to test the water. So if you like it, then absolutely go to your local comic shop and get it. Go to the Vault comic page if you want to get it directly through them, through the monthly issues, through the exclusive trade cover that they have. There's so many options directly through them, or through your LCS to get this book. And I think that's just a really cool way to build up hype, as well as just like making it more accessible to more people.
Yeah, I love it. And I mean, it's a great way to show confidence in your book, right?
You also got a little bit of some teasers as some other books. Vault is coming at the end of this as well. You get a first look at Lilith, which I'm very excited for. So that looks really cool. So if you're interested in that too, go check out the end of it because they have a nice little tease. And if you want to talk about a spicy book, that book gonna be a very, very, very spicy.
I love some spice in my life, Damon. You know it.
Before we wrap up, please make sure to smash that like button because it helps with the algorithm, and we always want to fight that YouTube algorithm because it is a demon on its own. And we've clearly noticed the more likes a video get, the more views a video get, and the more views a video get, the more comics we will talk about. And also, please be sure to go follow the Agents of Fandom on all the socials, Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, and Agents of Fandom everywhere else for all the content, from comics to movies to TVs to video games to music. We cover it all on the Agents of Fandom socials. Our social team does a phenomenal job, and we also put out our very own comic reviews, our social reviews, our top 3 comics to look out for this week on our social channels, on the Agents of Fandom account, and also on our Comic Corner pod account if you want more first looks at some comics coming out from Boom Studios and Vault. If you want some look aheads to solicits that are coming out, you can get all that information on our Comic Corner pod account, and the reviews and everything else, all our exclusive videos on the Agents of Fandom account. Any books next week that you're looking out for?
Oh, I mean,
Always ask you this.
it's hard
I
to
always
look
ask you
ahead.
this.
It's hard to look ahead 2 days, let alone a week. But I mean, like you said, I mean, anything Blood Hunt, I'm loving. Anything Jed McKay, I'm loving. I also want to shout out. This came out this week, but I've really been loving Hulk by Philip Kennedy Johnson. We talked about Crocodile Black, so Hulk is absolutely phenomenal, and of course, Immortal Thor. Like I don't know if we're getting an issue next week, but whether or not we are, obviously check that out. I love that book so much, and I obviously check out Comic Corner, all the great stuff we have cooking up. It's comics all the time, baby. All comics all the time. If you want to know about comics, you want to talk about comics, come check us out. Come find us. We're always available.
Here's 4 to 5 books I guarantee we will talk about next week. So go to your shops next week and pick them up if you want to follow along. We got Wonder Woman number 10, Nightwing 115, Ultimate Spider-Man number 6, Doctor Strange number 16, and Titans number 12. So many. That is my favorite week of comics right there. When I get like that Nightwing, Titans, Ultimate Spider-Man action, Wonder Woman, all in the same week. That is a great comics week for me personally. Can't wait for that. So go to your local comic shops and get those books if you want to follow along. Go read some comics. And buddy, where can people find you on the socials?
Y'all can find me at the usual place at _Fat Thor. You can also check out my other podcast, The Sons of Mjolnir. That is Mjolnir like Thor's hammer, for more comic reviews, interviews, creator interviews, all that good stuff. Come check us out. And of course, you can also find me at Agents of Fandom. We just started a new House of the Dragon after show. So if you guys are following along with House of the Dragon, you're into fantasy, come check that out as well. But other than that, I'm around. You know where to find me. I hope all of your stacks this last week have been absolutely fat and you've been reading some great comic books. And I just can't wait to do it again next week, Damon.
Have the day you all deserve, everyone. Have the day you have all earned. It's going to be a great weekend for us all because we have more comics heading our way. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Again, make sure you go to your local comic shops. Go pick up some comics. Go read some comics. And until next time,